This is PIX on Politics with Dan Mannarino.
And welcome to PIX on Politics, everybody. I am Dan Mannarino, and we made it to our final episode of 2025. What a year it has been. It started with the buzz of who may win the Democratic primary for New York City mayor. We have certainly come a long way. Now we're looking ahead to 2026 with a new incoming administration with lofty goals and big promises to fulfill. And in PIX on Politics tradition, we are bringing on some of our frequent panelists and best reporters out there to discuss the year that we are leaving and the road ahead. So let's get right to our PIX panel. Joining me for our year-end episode, politics reporter for the New York Daily News, Chris Sommerfeld. We have reporter for the city, Katie Honan. We have Democratic strategist Nick Smith, and City Hall bureau chief for the New York Post, Craig McCarthy. So here we go, guys. I'll start off with, it's been a year, okay? It has been a year, and you guys were out there every step of the way. Nick, you've been with me on some big nights talking about strategy for it all. But here we go. I want to start with kind of looking ahead before we look behind us, and start with what Mamdani, Mayor-elect Mamdani, has put forward in his affordability agenda, and really if it's going to be attainable in year one. So let me start with you, Katie. When you kind of hear all these things, universal child care, free buses, freeze the rent, is it going to happen in year one?
It is a lot in year one, especially since so much of it relies on state cooperation,
right.
Approving tax hikes. At this point, I know there may be other ways to raise money, but that's the way to do it. That requires buy-in from Albany, and that requires a lot of negotiation. As for the freezing the rent for the stabilized tenants or rent-regulated tenants, again, we saw last week that Mayor Adams appointed people to the board. Obviously, these are terms that they say, and he can't replace the board on year one, so it's unclear if that could happen right away as well. So it is a lot to get through in the first year.
So it's a lofty goal, but how much time is he allotted before the Bulldogs come after him?
Yeah. I'm glad I wasn't in that, by the way. I think he'll have about a 6 to 9 month honeymoon period in that first year. I think he'll need to pick one or two easy lifts. None of them are easy to do, but I think he can pick, for example, the child care thing and go to Albany and ask for the money very quickly. The budget is adopted, I think, in April at the state level. So he'll need to move quickly on one or two big ticket items. But while he's doing that, he has to avoid the trap of mayors gone past, which is public safety. If there's a big public safety issue, the agenda could shift. So he's got to press forward with his campaign promises, but watch out for the public safety topic as well.
Okay.
Well, I think two other things you have to talk about here, right, is the fact that we are dealing with a Trump administration in the city here that is going to be, I mean, they were best friends when they were down in D.C., but that is likely to change after, Mamdani ramps up his attacks on Trump. And there's about $8.6 billion at hand that we risk losing in the city if there is a fight over these things. And then on top of it, Bill de Blasio was the darling of the left when he came to office in 2013, but the left turned on him. And we have to see how long the honeymoon period is with the DSA with Mamdani in office, and that's going to be crucial to watch.
And I think to that point, too, with his base, they are expecting meaningful progress on something within 6 months, maybe even 100 days. Because remember, the mayor-elect himself has set the bar very high for himself. In his election night party, he said, the expectations will be high and we will meet them. If he doesn't make substantive progress on one of these fronts, relationships might start sour.
It sounds like, just from a few of his interviews and a few of his press conferences, it sounds like universal child care might be one of the things that he tries to uplift as one of the first things, especially because Governor Hochul's on board with it. But of course, there is this relationship, you alluded to it, about public safety, and that was his first big appointment, was Jessica Tisch. So when you look at public safety and the fact that he won't hire new officers, Chris, or he says he's kind of happy where the number is, how does he achieve public safety, especially with this new unit that he wants to, and what's the convincing and armoring he has to do to get it done?
I think he's going to run into some trouble potentially with the city council in putting a lid on hiring. You have Democrats like Julie Menon who might not be automatically on board with that, but I do think he's going to continue to try to strike this balance, right, between retaining the current levels on the NYPD, which he says is sufficient, and taking a lot of responsibilities away from the NYPD and shifting them over to the Department of Community Safety. How effective that's going to be, how convinced more moderate Democrats like Julie Menon and other stakeholders in the council might be about this, it remains to be seen a little bit, but I don't necessarily think that that's going to be a very easy fight for him either.
And I think also, the big issue with the NYPD isn't, it's attrition and hiring. And even if we get to, we were at 36,500 cops in 2019, and we're down to 34,000 right now, and that was after 4 years of having I would argue, one of the more pro-police mayors with contracts and everything like that in office, and he was having trouble recruiting. So that's going to be a big issue.
And is he going to speed up hiring classes at the academy or not? We don't know, but it's definitely going to be a challenge.
So when it comes to public safety, pick two things. Pick mental health, and the mental health, and pick the blanking. Well, let's focus on mental health.
Yeah.
So I think he can, really. So most folks agree that cops should not be going to mental health calls. You get calls, and unless it's violent, why are cops the first to go in? So I think the governor could agree to that, the council can agree to that, and he can push that as a significant win the first 6 months of public safety successes.
But that's like creating an entire apparatus to do this. I mean, the reason why cops go to it is because the apparatus is set up. And we do have teams right now that do this. They're Be Heard teams that started under de Blasio, and they're already having trouble routing those calls that are 911 calls to these Be Heard teams, because a lot of times when you're dealing with mental health calls, people in crisis, there is a threat of violence. So what are you going to do? I mean, like in New Jersey, they pair cops with mental health people and they go out together, but there's no system like that here. So anything he does is going to have to create an entirely new apparatus.
So that is actually the plan. So there would be cops as backup to these mental health folks.
When you look at it from like above, right, and you say, Eric Adams loves to say that his honeymoon period will be over real quick and he's going to learn it real quick. So how much of a honeymoon period, Katie, does he have? And does Eric Adams have a point? Like, did he have a grace period before anything was expected of him?
I would say he did. He would disagree, because I think one negative headline and that turned him. He's a little very thin-skinned. But yeah, again, I think these 6 months will be really, and up to the first budget that's passed, which was passed in June.
Yep.
I mean, the city budget and the state budget obviously will reveal a lot. But look, and I think it's what some people might want to see is at least some efforts to progress. And it all comes down to his messaging. You know, if he is blocked from doing what he wants to do because of other people, if he can at least message that, you know, up in Albany they're blocking me and I'm trying my best, people might be more forgiving of that.
Right.
But we'll see. And also when it comes to public safety, it's the perception of what people see, and all you need is one horrific tragedy in a large city like New York. Anything can happen. So we'll see how he handles that.
Yeah, I mean, so let me get to your favorite Eric Adams moment of the year. And of the year. I mean, we're looking at there's the mayoralty coming to an end, but it also is of the year, 2025. And there was a lot that happened, right? And so just to kind of look in the rearview mirror for a moment and say, okay, that happened, we covered it. What's your favorite?
Probably being at Gracie Mansion when he whipped out Kash Patel's book, Government Gangsters, after the charges were dropped. I think I gasped because I was so shocked to see that. Among other highlights of Gracie Mansion, but that's fine.
It wasn't when you got the potato chip bag full of $100. Okay.
No, I can't. He didn't give it to me, so
Right. Well, yes, that's true. Yes, but somebody just asked. Chris?
I think this final press conference he did really hit home for me. It hit on all the bizarreness of Eric Adams at the same time as it was really a look back on how crazy of an administration this has been. And I feel like that press conference was it encapsulated all of it.
Greg?
I just think everything that happened with how the indictment was dismissed and we saw over 2 month span the fall of Eric Adams. I mean, he quickly pivoted, and then I think you have to cap it off with saying Tom Homan being on Fox and Friends saying he was going to be up the mayor's butt if he didn't help him with ICE.
Did he have a point, Nick, Eric Adams, or does he have a point when he says the history books will be forgiving? And that we won't know his impact until years later.
That's a good point. I think he does have a point. The issue, though, is there were so many unforced errors in this entire tenure that he's starting to look back and say, yes, he got City of Yes, a bunch of housing units. Yes, the major index crimes have dropped for the most part. But he appointed friends who just screwed up the entire 4 years. So, he can argue he'll have some successes, but those things will overshadow his record.
Yeah, and then never said that it was actually wrong to do that.
That's right.
Kind of still defended that decision until the very end. So we can't possibly cram all of New York City's political headlines into just one group, so you guys are sticking around, sorry. As we discuss the already exciting race for governor and the 2026 midterms. PIX on Politics back, everybody, in just 2 minutes.
You're watching PIX on Politics with Dan Mannarino.
And welcome back to PIX on Politics, everybody. We are back with our PIX panel, Chris Sommerfeld, Katie Honan, Nick Smith, and Craig McCarthy. And we were just talking about really the local New York City politics, Mr. Mamdani, the mayor-elect, and outgoing Mayor Eric Adams. I want to talk about the state because we are going to be in a big race for governor next year. And last Friday, I was off, and I got the phone call. Well, something's going on with Elise Stefanik. And back on the phone, here we are doing breaking news of Elise Stefanik dropping out of the race for governor, which kind of pointed Bruce Blakeman, now the Republican nominee, and now the day later, President Trump goes out and endorses him. What did you make of that whole situation? Let me start with you, just as the Democrat looking inside from the Democratic strategy point of Elise Stefanik. Many are saying, why? And then she's not even running for Congress.
This is all about President Trump. She isn't the first woman to, say she supports the president and he doesn't reciprocate. The Virginia Republican governor nominee, Winsome Earl Sears, ran as a Trump MAGA supporter.
He wouldn't even say her name.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, she did her bidding to the president, and he just saw Bruce Blakeman as someone that he has affinity with.
But she did it along the way. I mean, she was going to get this UN ambassadorship, and he said, well, hold on, I need you to hold the seat in Congress because there's slim majority. So why not run for Congress again?
I think she's just tired of it all. I think MAGA has taken over the party for the foreseeable future, and I don't think she sees herself as part of it. Marjorie Taylor Greene dropped out as well, so we'll see. So
as you know, as reporters are kind of looking at this as a whole, do you think that embracing the MAGA title as a path to victory can withhold the test of time? Craig?
In New York, I don't know if it can. I wonder how that's going to play out, because I feel like Blakeman wasn't as full MAGA as Elise Stefanik was going into it, and I kind of thought, between the two of them, I was trying to keep talking to people of like who would be better received, and I kind of always leaned toward Bruce Blakeman because of that, because I thought that he might be better received because seems more like centered, I guess, for those things, but. It's going to depend. It's really going to depend what happens, over the course of the Trump presidency to see who is his successor and who he kind of deems that.
Yeah, I mean, Pataki was the last Republican governor. It was a much different time then, of course, and he won that third term with 9/11. But, how do you kind of see this shaping up with the midterms? Is Bruce Blakeman now specifically zeroing on an area like Staten Island? Or how does he get this broad base of Republican support in New York City?
He already has a lot here, in Nassau and Suffolk County. And there are, not just registered Republicans, but plenty of maybe more moderate registered Democrats who will not vote for Governor Hochul for any number of reasons. And he could perhaps win them over. Yeah, you go to Staten Island, you go to the requisite spots, you go to some parts of Queens where it's more Republican, or even some parts of Brooklyn that are now becoming more Republican. Yeah. There's a lot of dislike for Governor Hochul, although her approval numbers haven't improved, but within Republicans and more moderate Dems, who may also, any misstep from Mayor Mamdani, they'll see it as a reflection of Governor Hochul and turn to Bruce Blakeman.
And I don't have reporting to back this up, but it might also just be an electoral math question, right? Like Blakeman represents an area that's far more voter rich than Stefanik does. His base is pretty big, so Blakeman might just be seen as someone who actually has a more viable shot, even if it's an uphill battle.
And also, too, the strategy that we've been told about Hochul running, right, in embracing Mamdani is she wants to consolidate the downstate vote and needs to get a lot of this down here. And if you have somebody that's New York City adjacent, like Blakeman, you have a better shot of carving off those voters, because then every day he can hold a press conference. He has everything's going to, in every race that we're going to have next year, is going to come back to Mamdani. Well, every House race, everything is going to, the Republican Party is going to put him as the face of the Democratic Party, whether they like it or not.
That's true.
And it's every interview, including the ones I do, where you ask a question about Mamdani and how would you work with him, and if you're running as a Democrat for Congress in New York 12 or any of the races that are, did you support Mamdani? By the way, any of you running for any of these seats? Because everybody seems to be running for a congressional seat. But so let's talk about just the race for Congress for a moment right now, right? And Jerry Nadler says, I'm going to retire, and now everybody jumps into the race. So why so many people? And is DSA having a moment? Is it progressive movement having a moment? Or is there room now for a centrist?
Well, that's a good point. So DSA is feeling their power. I think it's true. And I think when it comes to the Nydia Velázquez seat, Jerry Nadler, people have been waiting for a generation to grab these seats. And so we're going to see a bunch of candidates jump in the race. So I think it'll come down to the progressive lane, DSA lane versus...
Yeah, but can you explain something to me? Why then would Mayor-elect Mamdani not support a DSA candidate? Why didn't he support Chiosei running against Hakeem Jeffries?
So there's a lot of dynamics with DSA, and there's racial dynamics in DSA, which we're going to talk about. Yep. There's generational dynamics. And so I think he picks and chooses, candidates who he thinks will best support his agenda, and it may not have been cheap. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, what do you guys think? What do you think of just all the names that are out there right now? Let's start with the Jerry Nadler seat.
I think a lot of people who believe they could run for office, there's a level of delusion that goes into it, and people come into it this kind of overconfidence of, look, especially running for office now, you get a lot of attention, and if it's someone like Jack Schlossberg, what has he really done I'm not sure what,
Right.
I know he was on Blue Bloods once, but other than that, I don't know what he's done.
Yeah, he
other than
says he was advocating on social media. And
right,
stuff.
other than being, you know, a social media person
Right.
and effectively a political nepo baby. This confidence that he can run in a seat for Congress, all these people kind of jumping in. There are people who don't even live. I think George Conway said he was going to run. He doesn't even live
moving in.
here.
Right.
Again, when everyone kind of jumps in the pool, there is that, which we're used to in politics, a real delusion about that they could win and they could get themselves in
And
the end.
what does it say about Brad Lander, who wasted no time and like, hey, now I'm going to run for the seat in Congress, and then he has this whole ad and then to pull it back because he really didn't have the rights to Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting. That's going to be an interesting race. It's interesting that he was a favorite at first to be in the Mamdani administration, then saw one poll and he wasn't really in that administration talks anymore, and then he jumped into this race because he's trying to. I guess that's maybe the deal that was made of having to clear the field for the progressive, who's Lander being kind of DSA adjacent.
We are seeing, too, in these races, just circle back on a quick thing that Nick said, the progressives versus the DSA, right?
Yes.
This keeps occurring in all of these primaries, and so far, Mamdani's kind of going with the progressive wing as opposed to DSA. It will be interesting to see how much that disillusions his base, even though he's been DSA through and through previously.
It's a good point. We're out of time. I want to thank all of you. I do want to just target you for 1 second, only because you seem to be targeted on social media of, will you go after folks with your cell phone as you did this administration? So will you keep that going?
Why would?
And will you have a new phone?
Everybody should. Everyone should. I mean,
I'm giving you a chance because it seems like that you often get targeted for it, and I want to, I feel like you're pretty fair and balanced on everybody.
I think every reporter should be bold and ask politicians and elected officials questions whenever they see them, as long as they're not like, who knows the circumstances, but I think any elected official, whether it's Mayor Mamdani or a city council member who said really inflammatory stuff on Twitter, you should not have any pretense that people who were supposed to cover you are not going to just.
Right.
We should put a phone in your face and ask you questions. That's sort of the.
You're some of my favorite people that are out there covering all of this, so keep it up in 2026, okay? When we come back, everybody, and happy holidays to all of you. When we come back, everybody, we're going to head across the Hudson with a look at the year ahead for New Jersey politics. Picks on Politics. We'll be right back. And welcome back, everybody. So we're switching up our panel to focus in on New Jersey now. So joining me, our New Jersey reporter here at PIX 11, Jim Vassell. Great to have you here, Jim. And Democratic strategist Nick Smith is back with us. So here we are. New Jersey politics threw us through a bit of a loop this year with this race, right? With the gubernatorial race between Mikey Sherrill and Jack Ciattarelli. Many people thought this was going to be a razor-tight race. It wasn't going to be called on election night. It was called within 20 minutes, and the margins were insane for Mikey Sherrill. So let me come to you first as the strategist looking at this. What does it say about the state of New Jersey? Not only that they kind of bucked history now and they have another Democrat once again, but that Jack Ciattarelli lost by really big margins. Yeah,
I think it was about 14 points. I was actually surprised by the margin of the governor-elect's win. I think this does come down to the federal environment where the president is in office, President Trump, and folks are sending a message to the president that, we want results on affordability in particular. The governor-elect ran as a kind of a moderate consensus builder, someone who is a Navy pilot, a prosecutor, a congressperson. And I think voters simply wanted someone who was a counter to the White House. That's why she won by about 14 points, I think.
Yeah, and closed the gap in some of these red areas. May not have won them, but certainly brought it over a little bit more blue, Jim. So you were on the ground. You were covering this campaign day in and day out. What did you hear were the big issues? And did she kind of win on those issues?
Well, yeah, I was actually there covering, as you know, Mikey Sherrill's campaign on the night she was elected. And I think, to your point, we were also a little bit surprised that the results came back so early in her favor. But I think really affordability was the number one issue. I mean, all summer we talked about the issue of high energy bills in New Jersey, and I think her message of declaring a state of emergency on utility bills on day one in office, I think that's what really resonated with voters. But also, to your point, with the kind of shift toward the blue side of things, I think it's also New Jersey's governor election is typically seen as an early temperature check on how Americans view the president and what's going on in Washington, right? So I think that's a
bit of a bellwether. And she's also kind of breaking tradition with her inauguration, which will not be in Trenton at the State House.
That's right. She'll be the first governor swearing into their first term not in Trenton. right? And New Jersey takes its history and political history very seriously. That said, I haven't heard too many people who have spoken out against this, or that's not to say that there aren't. As I said, New Jersey takes its history very seriously, but I do think, this is her home county of Essex, right? So that counts for something, and I think it could be a sign that she wants to send an early message that she is going to do things differently than previous administrations.
She's also vacating her congressional seat, and that is another, we were talking about New York races being crowded. That's also a very crowded race. The lieutenant governor currently under Phil Murphy is running for that seat. He did not endorse her, Phil Murphy, he endorsed somebody else. What do you kind of see happening in that seat? It will say blue, but is it a progressive? Is it moderate?
That's a good question. I would probably lean moderate based on the national environment, and I love your point about affordability. Folks are really focusing on the issues. So whatever congressional candidate can say, hey, I'm going to go to Washington and help Jersey with, affordability. I guess property tax would be a state issue, but whatever we can do federally to bring down costs for Jersey residents, will do it. So we'll see what happens in that primary.
I know we're not in the prediction game or crystal ball game, but kind of just given what's been happening around in the state of affordability, do you think Congress stays red?
I don't think so. I think the question for me is how big will the Democratic win be? Folks are really focused on the issues. Sometimes it's more a cultural war and those kinds of things. But this is trending to be an issue-based set of elections, and the president is gerrymandering red states deliberately because he knows the Dems are coming for him.
Yeah, okay. And just last word for you, Jim. She hasn't taken office yet, but has there been something that's been jumping out at you as like a key point that she's already done or following up on before she takes office?
I think just going around and listening to the people who elected her, she got a quick early jump. The very first thing she did as governor-elect was go to Newark and help give out food at a food pantry. Yeah. So I think that was another clear message that she wanted to send there, and she's also in the middle of her diner tour.
Her listening tour is on. Okay, thank you both, and you'll be very busy in 2026. We'll be right back, everybody. And thanks to all our panelists for joining us today, and for all of you at home who have watched us not only today, but throughout a very eventful year. I'm Dan Mannarino. We'll see you in 2026.